Welcome back to Rome Unveiled. I am Sarah.
And I am Giovanni.
We are standing on the Capitoline Hill again, but we have moved a little. We are looking down at the Roman Forum from a different place. We are near the famous Tarpeian Rock. And honestly, Giovanni, the feeling here today is right for our story. It is windy. It is a little wild. The sky is a dark purple color. It is the color you see before a big summer storm.
It is right, Sarah, because the time we are talking about now was like a storm. This was the early years of the Republic. It was a wild, dark, and loud time.
Let's remember what happened. In our last story, we saw the end of the kings. We heard the sad story of Lucretia. We heard the promise of Brutus. They pushed out the bad king, Tarquin the Proud. The king is gone. The old system is broken, like a vase on the floor.
Yes, and now the Romans are standing in the middle of the broken pieces.
I think movies often skip this part of history. You know, the movie ends when the bad leader is gone. Everyone is happy. The music plays. We think they lived happily ever after, in a free government.
But real history does not end. The next morning comes, and the morning after a big change is a very scary time. Imagine the quiet in the Roman Forum down there. For 244 years, there was always a king. One man told you when to fight, when to pray, when to plant food. He was like the father of the city. And now? The king's chair is empty.
It is a power vacuum, and nature hates a vacuum, an empty space.
Yes, the Romans were suddenly free. But they were also alone, and enemies were all around them. To the north, the Etruscans wanted their city back. To the south, the Volscians were stealing their food. Inside the city, poor people were very hungry. They did not need a party. They needed a government.
And they could not use the old government. They had to make something new, something that did not really exist before.
They had to build a machine, a political machine. This machine could run the state, lead the armies, and judge criminals. But here is the important part. This machine could never, ever be taken over by one person.
A machine that was safe from a king.
Exactly. And today, we will look at that machine. We will look at its parts, its levers, and its messy engine. This engine powered the Roman Republic. But I must warn you, it is not a beautiful machine. It is heavy and loud, and it used a lot of human suffering as its fuel.
Okay, Giovanni, let's start with the biggest problem. The king had total power. He had Imperium. You told us before that Imperium is the power of life and death.
Yes, Imperium is a frightening idea. It is not just authority. It is a religious and military right to command. When a man has Imperium, the gods are working through him. If he orders you to march, you march. If he orders you to die, you die.
So when they pushed out the king, did they stop Imperium? Did they say, no one should have that much power?
No, this is the clever Roman idea. They knew they still needed that power. They needed someone to lead the army against the Etruscans. You cannot lead an army by talking in a group. You need one commander. So they kept the Imperium. They kept the total power. But they put very strong limits on it.
And those limits were the consulship.
The consulship, the most important job in the Republic. Instead of one king who ruled for his whole life, they chose 2 consuls. These consuls ruled for only 1 year.
2 men. Always 2.
Always 2. This is the idea of collegiality. That was the first limit. If you are consul, you are very powerful. You have 12 lictors. They walk in front of you. They carry the axes. You wear a special purple toga. You sit in the curia. That is the Senate house. But you can never act alone. Wherever you go, you have a shadow, your colleague.
And this colleague is not your partner. He is your rival.
He is your opponent. The system was built on the idea of mutual suspicion. We talked about the veto last time. It is also called intercessio. That means to step between. If one consul tried to act like a tyrant, the other consul could stop him. For example, maybe the first consul wanted to kill a citizen without a trial. The second consul could step between them. He could say, "I forbid this," and the action would stop instantly.
That sounds great for stopping a tyrant, but it sounds terrible for getting work done. Imagine a modern president. Now imagine a second president from the other party. This second president can just say no to everything.
It was a recipe for gridlock, for stopping all work. And the Romans were okay with that. They preferred no action to bad action. They would rather nothing happen than the wrong thing happen. But think about the psychology. You only have 1 year. The clock is ticking from the moment you are elected.
Right, the second limit. Annuality. The 1-year term.
You have 12 months to make your mark on history. You want to win a war. You want to pass a law. But your colleague can stop you. So what do? You have to talk. You have to find a middle way. Or you have to wait for him to leave the city.
Wait, did that work?
Sometimes. Oh, my colleague is away fighting the Volscians? Quick, let's pass this law. But usually, they took turns. In the field, leading the army, they often changed command day by day.
Day by day? That sounds like a disaster. Monday is my plan, Tuesday is yours.
It often was. We have stories of battles. One consul wanted to attack. The other wanted to defend. So they would argue. They argued until the enemy was literally at the gates. We will see later, in the Punic Wars, how this leads to total disaster. But in the early Republic, it served its purpose. It kept the monster of Imperium in a cage.
So the consul is the king cut in half, and he has an expiration date.
A strong image, but it is true. And remember, once that expiration date hit, your year was up. You were just a normal citizen again. And that meant people could take you to court. You could be put on trial.
Accountability.
Accountability. A king answers only to the gods. A consul answers to the courts. The fear of what happens after you leave office is a powerful thing. It makes you behave while you are in office.
It's fascinating to think about the pressure of that 1 year. And so much of this drama happened right below us. You mentioned the Curia, the Senate House.
Yes, the Curia Julia stands there now. But the first Curia was in the same area. It was the heartbeat of this new system.
We've only just touched on the history here. If you want to learn more, our app, Rome Audio Tour Guide Offline, covers this exact spot. It has much more detail. Sometimes there are up to 40 different audio parts for one place. You can choose to listen to everything, or you can choose to listen to just the main points. You can even choose stories about the topics you like most. The app lets you explore every layer of history. We simply can't fit it all into one podcast.
And that is important for a story this deep. For example, stand in front of the Curia Julia on the Roman Forum tour. You can really see it. You can see it. You can imagine how close and intense these fights between consuls would have been.
Exactly. But Giovanni, if the consuls were the ones shouting in the Senate House, who put them there? Who actually voted?
The people voted. But not the people in the way we think of modern democracy. In Rome, you did not just walk into a booth and vote. You voted as part of a group. And the most important voting group in the early Republic was the Century.
This brings us to the Centuriate Assembly, Comitia Centuriata. I hear century, and I think of the army. Centurions.
You are exactly right. This is the hardest idea for us today. The Roman voting group was the Roman army. They were the same thing.
Explain that.
The assembly did not meet in the Roman Forum. It was not allowed. The army could not gather inside the city walls. This area was called the Pomerium. It was a sacred line. So to elect the consuls, the people had to walk outside the city. They went to the field of Mars, the Campus Martius.
So they really walked out like soldiers, just to vote?
Yes, they gathered under their army flags. They were put into groups called centuries. This was based on their weapons, and their weapons were based on their money.
Money equals weapons.
Exactly. In the ancient world, the government did not buy your armor, you bought it yourself. If you were rich, you bought a bronze chestplate, a helmet, leg guards, a shield, and a sword. You were a Class 1 citizen. You were heavy infantry.
And if you were poor?
You brought a slingshot, or maybe just some rocks. You were Class 5. Or, if you had nothing, you were the proletarii. This word means people who only own their children. You had no weapons, so you had almost no vote.
So the voting power was not equal?
No, it was very unequal. There were 193 centuries in total. The rich groups, the horse riders, and the heavy soldiers controlled 98 of them. Do the math.
That's a majority. 98 out of 193.
Correct. And they voted in order. Class 1 voted first. If Class 1 agreed on a man, they reached 98 votes. The election was finished. The lower classes were simply told, "Go home. We have decided."
They didn't even get to vote?
Often, no, they would stand in the sun on the Campus Martius all day. They watched the rich men vote. Then they were sent away. It was a system made by the rich, for the rich. They said, "We take the biggest risks in war. We stand in the front line. We pay for the expensive armor, so we should choose the leaders."
He who pays the piper calls the tune, or he who brings the bronze shield picks the general.
Yes, it was a timocracy. That means rule by the wealthy. But it created a strong connection. The men electing the consul were the same men who would have to follow him in battle the next week.
That brings up the scalability trap again. If I am a soldier in the 1st century, I am voting for my general. But I am voting for him based on, what, his family name, his speech?
His popularity, his money, his father's good name, not always his skill in war. And remember, he only has the job for 1 year.
It seems very risky. You're changing your general every year. Just when he learns how to lead the army, has gone.
It was the big weakness of the Republican Army. It was run by beginners. A consul might be a great speaker in the forum, but a failure in battle. And because he wanted to win glory fast, he was often careless. He would rush into battle to get his triumph parade. He would not wait for the right moment. Rome lost thousands of men because of impatient consuls watching the calendar.
So we have beginner generals, elected by a fixed assembly. It's amazing they survived at all.
They almost didn't. From the mid-5th century onward, the system started to break. The wars were getting bigger. They were fighting the Etruscans, the Equi, the Volscians. Sometimes all at once. 2 consuls were not enough. You can't split 2 men into 3 armies.
And I imagine the common people, the plebeians, were getting tired. They were tired of being told to be quiet and listen to the rich patricians.
They were very angry. The plebeians wanted to become consuls. They said, "We fight. We die. Why can't we lead?" The patricians answered with their usual pride. They said, "Because you don't have the auspices. That is the right to ask the gods for signs. The gods would not accept you."
That's very convenient. Sorry, the gods only like rich people.
Exactly. So they stopped moving. The state needed more army leaders. The plebeians wanted more power. The solution was a strange Roman agreement. It makes no sense to us, but it made sense to them. They stopped the consulship.
They stopped choosing consuls?
For some years, yes. Instead, they chose military tribunes with consular power.
That is a very long title.
It is. Basically, instead of 2 consuls, they chose 3, 4, or even 6 of these military tribunes. And, this is important, plebeians could try to get this job.
Ah, I see. The patricians said, okay, you cannot be consul. That special title is for us. But you can be this, assistant manager.
Perfect. You can have the power, but not the honor. The patricians kept the consulship pure, but they also accepted they needed plebeian help to run the army. It was a quick fix, a temporary solution.
And did it work?
It stopped the city from having a war inside itself, for a time. From about 444 BC to 367 BC, they changed back and forth. 1 year consuls, the next year military tribunes. This shows the Roman constitution was not fixed. It was alive. It was messy. They were inventing it as they went. They tried to keep the machine working while parts were breaking.
We keep saying the plebeians were angry. We talk about them wanting power. But listening to you, I think it wasn't just about wanting a job. It was about staying alive.
It was about hunger. And it was about chains. We need to talk about the worst part of the early republic. The Nexum.
Nexum. It sounds like connection.
A bond. Specifically, a debt bond. Imagine this, Sarah. You are a Roman farmer. You have a small piece of land, a wife, children. You are a citizen. You are proud. But every summer, the consul calls you to war.
Because the army is the people. There are no full-time soldiers yet.
Correct. You are the army. So you take your spear and you leave. You are gone for 3-4 months fighting the Sabines. While you are gone, who is collecting your wheat?
Nobody. Or my wife is trying to do it alone.
Exactly. Or, worse, the enemy attacks your farm while you are away defending the state. They burn your barn. They steal your animals. You come home a hero, covered in glory, but your farm is destroyed. You have no food for winter. What do?
I guess I have to ask for money.
You go to your neighbor, a rich patrician. He didn't lose his farm. He has slaves to work it. He has plenty of seeds. He lends them to you. But you must pay back more than you borrowed. And next year, there is no rain. You cannot pay.
What happens? Do I say I have no money?
You say Nexum. You promise your own body as payment. You go to court. There is a ceremony with bronze scales. And the judge, who is a patrician, gives you to the man you owe money. You are still a citizen in name, but in reality, you are his prisoner. He takes you to his private jail. He puts chains on you. He works you like a slave on his land.
Wait. A Roman citizen could be made a slave by another Roman citizen?
It was debt bondage. This was different from slavery, but not much. The writer Livy tells a famous story. It shows the people's anger. He says that one day, around 495 BC, an old man ran into the forum. He ran right down there, between the market stalls.
What did he look like?
He was a terrible sight. His clothes were old and torn. He was very dirty. His hair was wild. His beard was a mess. He looked like a wild animal. But then, someone in the crowd shouted, Wait. I know him.
They knew him?
They knew he was a veteran. He had been a centurion, a leader of soldiers. The crowd moved closer. They spoke quietly. Then the old man started to shout. He said, "While I was fighting for you against the Sabines, the enemy burned my farm. They took my animals. I had to pay taxes. So I borrowed money."
And then?
Then he did something shocking. He tore open his dirty shirt. The crowd made a loud sound of surprise. On his chest, they saw scars. Old, white scars. They were marks of honor. He got them fighting for Rome.
The proof of his service.
But then he turned around. And his back. His back was terrible. It had new, bloody marks. He had been whipped. Not by an enemy. He was whipped by a Roman man he owed money to.
That is very powerful. The difference is clear. The scars of glory on his chest. The scars of slavery on his back.
The crowd went crazy. They almost started a riot. This was the truth of the early republic. It was not a polite talk about laws. It was a hard fight against physical pain. This is what caused the conflict of the orders. The plebeians did not just want a vote. They wanted their own bodies back.
While the rich and poor fought in the Forum, they forgot to look north. It is terrible to think about those private prisons right here in the city.
They were everywhere, and the rich kept all the money. In fact, if we look down at the Temple of Saturn.
By the way, if you plan to stand in this very spot in Rome, looking at the Temple of Saturn, you will not need the internet to hear these stories. Our app, the Rome Audio Tour Guide offline app, downloads everything to your phone. You can listen with no connection. You can even turn your screen off and put your phone in your pocket. It plays the stories automatically while you enjoy the view.
It absolutely does. And it lets you stand there. You can look at the old treasury in the Roman Forum. You can imagine the money stored inside. And you can imagine the poor people who were hungry just outside its steps.
So the system was unfair. The courts were run by the rich men. The army was led by the rich men. How did the plebeians fight back? They did not have weapons. They were the poor.
Ah, but remember, they were the army. Without the plebeians, who holds the shields? Who throws the spears? The patricians were the officers. But the plebeians were the muscle.
So they stopped working? They went on strike?
The biggest strike, it was called the Secessio Plebis, the secession of the plebs. It happened soon after that old soldier appeared in the Forum. The Volscians were attacking. The consuls ordered the men to prepare for war. And the men said, "Number?"
No.
They simply walked away. They gathered their families. They left the city gates open. They marched to a nearby hill. It was called the Sacred Mount, or maybe the Aventine. And they just sat there.
That must have been very scary for the patricians. They were alone in the city. It was like a ghost town. And an enemy army was coming.
They were very afraid. The patricians understood. They said, "We are generals, but we have no army. We are lords, but we have no people." They asked the plebeians to return. They sent a man to talk. His name was Menenius Agrippa.
What did he say? Did he offer them money?
He told them a story. A simple story. We call it the belly and the limbs. He stood before the angry crowd on the hill. He said, "A long time ago, the parts of the body were angry at the belly. The hands said, 'We do all the work. We carry, we lift, we fight.' The mouth said, I do all the chewing. The legs said, we do all the walking. And the lazy belly just sits there. It only eats.
I understand. The patricians are the belly.
So Agrippa said, the limbs went on strike. They made a plan. The hands promised not to lift food to the mouth. The mouth promised not to open. The teeth promised not to chew. They wanted to make the belly hungry. They wanted it to obey.
And what happened?
But soon, Agrippa continued, the hands became weak. They could not lift a sword. The legs could not walk. The mouth could not speak. The whole body began to die. Then they understood. The belly was not just lazy. It digested the food. Then it sent blood back to the veins. The blood went back to the hands and the feet. They realized something. By starving the belly, they were killing themselves.
That is clever propaganda. He said, we rich people are necessary. We digest the resources?
It was manipulative, but it worked. The plebeians were also scared of the Volscians. They agreed to come back, but they demanded a price. They wanted their own shield.
And that shield was the Tribune of the Plebs.
Yes. We talked about them a little before. They are very important. The Tribune was not a leader of all the people. He was the leader of the plebs only. And his body was sacrosanct.
Sacrosanct. That means holy, right?
It means this. If you touch him, you die. The plebeians made a sacred promise. They said, if anyone hurts a tribune, we will kill him immediately. We will not have a trial. This made the tribune a walking, talking veto.
So a tribune could step in front of a magistrate. The magistrate might be hitting a poor debtor. The tribune could say, stop.
That was the power of auxilium, the power to help. And to be sure they were always ready, the tribune could not lock his front door at night. 24 hours a day, any citizen could run into his house. They could ask for safety.
That is an amazing system. It was a safe house system, built into the government. It was holy.
It was the only way to balance the consuls, great power. The republic now had two heads. The patrician consuls were one head. The plebeian tribunes were the other. They hated each other. They fought all the time. But they forced each other to find a middle way.
This gives new meaning to the rostra down in the forum. When you see it on our Rome Audio Tour Guide offline app, you understand. That was the platform. The Tribune stood there. They challenged the power of the Senate.
Exactly. It was a battleground of words.
We talked a lot about Rome's inside problems. The debt, the strikes, the elections. But Rome became famous for what it did outside its walls. War.
Constant war.
But you told me before, Romans were obsessed with being the good guys. They could not just attack a neighbor because they wanted their land. That would be nefas, a terrible crime.
Correct. The Romans believed the gods would only support a just war. They called it bellum justum. They had to prove they were the victims. They had to show they were only fighting to defend themselves, or they were fighting to keep a promise to an ally.
Even when they were clearly the ones starting the fight?
Yes, especially then. To do this, they used a special group of priests. They were called the Fetials.
The Fetials. Who are they?
They were like diplomats for the gods. Imagine Rome had a problem. Maybe a Roman trader was robbed in a nearby town. The Fetial priests would walk to that town's border. They wore special wool bands on their heads. They carried holy plants, pieces of grass. They took this grass from the top of the Capitoline Hill. It represented the very ground of Rome.
And what did they do at the border?
They performed a kind of play. The head Fetial would stand at the line. He would shout a special legal prayer to Jupiter. He would say, "Hear me, Jupiter. Rome has been wronged." He would list the demands. He might say, "Return the stolen things in 33 days, or else."
And if the enemy said no?
The Fetial would go back to the border. He carried a spear. The spear was made of special wood. Sometimes it was covered in blood. In front of people watching, he would throw that spear across the line. He threw it into the enemy's land.
And that throw started the war?
Yes, that was the moment. Before the spear landed, it was peace. The moment it touched the ground, it was war. It meant that land was now enemy land. It was open for Rome to take.
That's a powerful ceremony. But Giovanni, Rome will conquer the world. They will fight in Greece, in Africa, in Spain. You cannot walk a priest to Carthage and throw a spear. The walk would take months.
You found the problem again. The scalability trap. The ceremony was made for a small world. Your enemy was close by. So when they fought faraway enemies, they had to change the system.
How do you change a holy ceremony?
You use a legal trick. They chose a small piece of ground in Rome. It was in front of the Temple of Bologna. This temple is near the theater of Marcellus. They declared by law this dirt is now enemy land.
No way.
Yes, a prisoner of war would be forced to buy the land. Or they would just say it was true. Then, when they wanted war with a faraway king, the Fetial priest walked to the Temple of Bologna. He threw his spear into that little piece of dirt in the middle of Rome.
That is a chaydi, very funny and very official. By law, this dirt is now Macedonia. Egmitwel.
It is very Roman. To us, it looks like a trick. To them, it was very important. The form had to be correct. If they did the ceremony correctly, Jupiter had to support them. It did not matter that it was a trick. It mattered that it was legal.
Okay, so they have a legal reason for war. But how did they win so much? Rome was just one city. The Etruscans had more money. The Greeks had more knowledge. The Gauls were bigger and stronger. What was Rome's special power?
It wasn't the spear, it wasn't the army, it was citizenship. They called it civitas.
Citizenship?
Think about Greek cities like Athens or Sparta. They were very closed. If you were born in Athens, you were a citizen. If you moved there from Corinth, you were a foreigner. Your children were foreigners. Your grandchildren were foreigners. You could never become an Athenian citizen.
So their population had a limit. They could only grow as fast as people were born.
Yes. Sparta was even worse. They were very afraid of outsiders. But Rome was like a vampire.
A vampire? That is a dark picture.
But it is true. Rome took the strength of its enemies. When Rome beat a town, they did not just destroy it. They made it part of Rome.
How did they do that?
They offered a deal. You are now Roman citizens, sometimes with the right to vote, sometimes without it. You have legal rights. You can trade with us without paying extra money. You can marry our daughters. But you must send soldiers to fight in our army.
That is the difficult part.
That is the engine, the power of the empire. Every time Rome won a war, its army got bigger. Because the defeated enemy became the new soldier.
So it grows and grows, like a snowball.
Yes. Later, a king named King Pyrrhus fought Rome. He beat them in battle many times. But he looked at their army and said, "It is like fighting a hydra. That is a monster from stories. You cut off one head, and two grow back." He could not understand. He beat them, but the next year, the Roman army was larger than before.
Because the Romans he was fighting were actually people from other places. They were Latins, Sabines, and Volscians. Rome had made them into Romans.
This idea of taking in the conquered people was special. It was unique in the ancient world. It is why Rome lived when smarter, richer cities fell. They turned their enemies into themselves.
We talked about a lot: consuls, tribunes, debt, war, citizenship. But imagine I walked into the Senate House in 400 BC. I asked to see the Constitution. That is the document with all the rules. What would they give me?
They would look at you with confusion. There was no document. There was no paper that said "We the people." There was only the mos maiorum.
The way of the ancestors.
Yes, the custom of the greater ones. Rome was not ruled by written rules, mostly. It was ruled by tradition. Why do we have 2 consuls? Because Brutus did it. Why do we declare war this way? Because our grandfathers did it.
That sounds weak. If it is just tradition, can't someone just decide to ignore it?
They could, and later they did. That is how the Republic fell. But for hundreds of years, the system was held together by auctoritas. That means shame and respect. The important people felt pressure from the ghosts of their ancestors.
You talked about the funeral masks in the last episode.
Yes, the wax masks of the ancestors. They sat in the main room of every rich house. They watched you. If a Roman leader thought about breaking the rules, he would have to look at the mask of his grandfather. He would have to explain why he was destroying the system his grandfather built.
Pressure from dead people.
It is the most powerful kind of pressure. The Roman Constitution was a web of social rules, religious fears, and family pride. It worked because the ruling class agreed to follow the rules. They agreed that saving the Republic was more important than their own personal power.
Until, of course, the prizes got too big.
Until the empire became so rich that one man's ambition was stronger than the shame from the ancestors. But that is a story for Caesar.
We built the machine. We saw the gears. It is a messy, violent, and brilliant machine. It balances the rich and the poor. It balances the city and the empire. It balances the living and the dead.
It is a machine built for a small city-state, for a town. You could walk across the Roman Forum in 5 minutes. The army could gather in a field just outside the city gates.
But Rome will not stay a town.
No. And that is the sad story waiting to happen. This machine has leaders who change every year. It has slow old traditions. It needs unwritten rules and shame to work. This machine will soon be tested on a very, very big scale. It is about to conquer the whole Mediterranean Sea.
So the question is, can a city council run an empire?
I will tell you the answer now. No. The scalability trap will finally break the machine apart. But before it breaks, it will conquer the world.
But before it conquers the world, it must survive its worst day.
The day the machine stopped completely.
Next time, on Rome Unveiled, we will talk about the event that hurt Rome more than anything else. We will talk about the barbarians at the gate. This system could just hold together in peaceful times. It would be tested to destruction one summer. That summer, the sky over Rome turned the color of blood.
The Gallic sack, fire, ash, and the geese that saved the capital.
I can't wait. Giovanni, thank you for guiding us through the machinery today.
It was my pleasure, Sarah.
If this episode makes you want to visit, do not go without the full guide. Download the Rome Audio Tour Guide offline app from the App Store or Play Store today, or find the link at www.romeunveiled.com. We have special walking tours ready for you. For example, the Roman Forum Tour and the Two Sides of the Tiber River Tour. They will guide you step by step through the Eternal City. It is your personal guide right in your pocket.
Until next time.
Arrivederci.